Now let's talk about how radio stations measure their audience, their performance, and ultimately their success. Let's start with a radio market. This is a region where the population can hear the same radio stations or the area served by a broadcast facility. There are both radio and television markets, with radio markets generally smaller than TV because of broadcast power restrictions. For example, in radio, the number one or largest market is New York City, followed by Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, Dallas, and so on. Albuquerque is radio market number 69 and Las Cruces number 214 to give you some perspective. In television, New York City is still number one, Los Angeles number two, Chicago number three, Philadelphia at number four. Then Albuquerque is number 48 and includes Santa Fe. Las Cruces is at number 93 and is included with El Paso. Commercial stations use the ratings data to demonstrate the value of their audience to advertisers and base their programming decisions almost exclusively on ratings, since higher ratings means more commercials, which means more profit. Because radio markets are so competitive, if a commercial station consistently underperforms, chances are the program director, announcers, or even total formats will change quickly. I worked for KKOB FM for 4 years, and in those 4 years, I had four different program directors. Non commercial educational stations absolutely monitor ratings data to see how programming is performing, but public radio stations don't make complete programming decisions based on ratings alone. They also consider listener financial support for certain programs and community service issues, meaning do certain shows aid its mission to serve the public interest? The company that provides these ratings is Nielsen Audio. For radio, Nielsen uses a listener diary method. They begin by calling prospective participants and ask if they would like to be a part of important radio ratings research. If the answer is yes, Nielsen provides a paper diary for everyone in the household over the age of 12 and sends $5 with each diary. Each diary is to be filled out for 1 week beginning on a Thursday. Each day, you mark the times you started listening and stopped, the station call letters or some kind of identifier, and where you listened at home, at work, in the car, or somewhere else. After you finish with Wednesday, you mail it back in the self addressed stamped envelope and wait for $5 more to come your way when Nielsen receives your diary. Ratings data is compiled and published quarterly for each radio market in spring, summer, fall, and winter books. The data is broken down by various demographics, namely gender, age, ethnicity, and day part. Now, there is a lot of data printed, but the most commonly examined figures by stations and ad agencies are as follows. Cum is the total number of different or unique people who listen to a station for at least 5 minutes during the course of a day part, expressed in hundreds. The average quarter hour, or AQH, persons is the average number of people listening to a particular station for at least 5 minutes during a 15-minute period, or any given quarter hour, also expressed in hundreds. The average quarter hour share is a percentage of radio listeners listening to a station during any given quarter hour. Time spent listening, or TSL, is the amount of time a listener spent listening to or is exposed to a station, expressed in hours and minutes. TSL trends are helpful in determining if programming decisions are having a positive effect on the audience. It is important to understand that cum only counts a listener once, whereas the AQH persons is a product of cum and TSL. For example, if you looked into a room and saw Fred and Jane, then 15 minutes later saw Fred with Sarah, the cum would be 3 for Fred, Jane, and Sarah, but the AQH persons would be 2, meaning there is an average of 2 people in the room in a given 15-minute period. Or think of it like this. If you worked for a retail store, the cum would be the number of different people who shopped in your store each week, while the average quarter hour persons would be the average number of people in the store during any 15-minute period. Stations will often take into account a 4 book average or yearly average to gauge overall performance and prior to making major programming decisions. Yes, there are human problems with the diary method Nielsen employs. For example, memory problems are prevalent. A person may be faithful in filling out their diary on Thursday and Friday, then the weekend comes and they forget about it. They're back at work on Monday, then remember Wednesday that they never finished filling out their diary. So they try to recall when and to what stations they listened to over the past 5 days, which is most likely inaccurate. Or incorrect information is recorded in diaries, like I suspect happens often with KANW and KUNM, both airing NPR programs. A listener may write down they were listening to KUNM when in fact they were listening to KANW and vice versa. In an effort to be more scientific and overcome the problems associated with the diary method, Nielsen has developed the portable people meter, a wearable device similar to a pager that electronically gathers inaudible codes that identify the source of a broadcast. Nielsen recruits and compensates listeners to wear the device for a certain length of time. The PPM is currently used in about 50 markets and can also be used for television, movies, and music research purposes. Review your lecture guide and the slides as needed. Contact me with any questions, then proceed to the quiz. We'll discuss the transmission system in the next session.